Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv. Joining me this time for a chat is Ethan Alexanian from the Beatles-related show Fans on the Run. Hey Ethan, thanks for being here.
Hey Marv, how are you doing?
Not bad, thanks very much. How are you doing?
This is one of the first few times I've actually been on another show that isn't my own. So I'm excited. I'm a little nervous. First time I've actually been talked to about my show.
I thought it would have been mentioned in some of the other shows you've been on, like when they was Fab, and you've been on Two Legs as well, I believe.
Yeah. I have been on two legs. The episode may be up whenever this goes up, but it is not out as of yet.
So anyway, how were you first introduced to the world of podcasting, Ethan?
Well, my introduction to the world of podcasting is kind of weird because I've never been a huge fan of podcasts.
Okay.
The only reason I have one is because it was the most likely medium for what I wanted to do. You know, I occasionally see bits of like the Joe Rogan podcast, and there's some other ones I follow, but I wasn't really too familiar with the world of podcasting until about this year.
Okay. So what got you into them then this year? Why did you start, listening to them and doing your own show? How did that come about?
Well, so I don't know how many people know this, but in around March of 2020, there's this little thing called the coronavirus.
Oh, that little thing. Yeah.
That locked down everything.
Yeah.
And for a couple weeks, I felt so deprived of human contact that I just wanted to talk to people, mainly about the Beatles. And so I thought, I'll do this under the guise of a podcast. And that's basically how Fans on the Run started.
Okay. So explain what the show is all about then for the people hearing about you for the first time.
Well, the tagline for my show is like the podcast made by, for, and about Beatles fans. So, and the show is called Fans on the Run, so it really does what it says on the tin. It's I bring on a guest, doesn't matter who they are. The only requirement is that they're a big fan of the Beatles. And I talk to them about how they discovered the Beatles, what the Beatles mean to them. We get opinionated with favorite albums, least favorite albums, songs, all that good stuff. And I've had a lot of fun doing it since I started, and I've been able to talk to a lot of really cool people who I don't think I would have been able to otherwise. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, the good thing about it is that you seem to be getting people from, all walks of life. So you get the normal, shall we say, Joe on the street.
Yeah.
You get other podcasters that do shows about the Beatles, podcasters, I'm guessing, that don't do shows about the Beatles, writers, and, of course, people that have worked with or are in the industry as well.
Well, I've only done a few episodes of that sort as of now, but I hope to do more in the future of people who worked with the Beatles, knew the Beatles, that kind of stuff.
So how did you discover the music of the Beatles in the first place?
Well, since this is going to be season 2, I've been told I can tell this freely. If you want to hear more about this, you should probably listen to episode 50 of Fans on the Run, the big 50th episode spectacular. But where the whole concept of that show is the script is going to be flipped, and I'm going to have the wonderful Kid O'Toole on asking me about how I got into the Beatles, but I will tell you here, repeat viewing. So about 2010, 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, depending on when you're listening to this.
Yep, 11 years it'll be, yep.
Or it was like November of 2010, so 10 and a bit. I had always heard from some of my relatives about this mythical band called the Beatles. And, I listened to a lot of music. I was mainly a big Michael Jackson fan.
Okay.
But I digress. And then one day I was at home and I was sitting on the couch, and we had this little wicker basket beside the couch that had just some junk in it. And there were a couple CDs. There's a Peter, Paul, and Mary CD, and there was a CD of the Blue Album, the Beatles 67 to 70.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, so this is the Beatles. And so I went up to my CD player, put it on, and was absolutely blown away by the fact that Sgt. Pepper and With a Little Help from My Friends were two different songs, even though they sounded like the same song. My CD track number went from 3 to 4, and my little 8-year-old mind was blown. That was what sold it. And, there was some Beatles stuff in the house. Like, we had the coffee table Beatles anthology book downstairs.
Okay.
And so I kind of co-opted that. And so those were, the two things that got me into the Beatles. And I haven't looked back since.
No, I think that's a really good book as well. That I've actually got 2 copies of it. I like digging into that.
Oh, it's fantastic. I should have 2 copies of it because the copy I have was the copy that 8-year-old me had. And so it's kind of I'm not going to say the rude word. It's beat to hell. It is beat to hell.
It's been loved, and you can see the love there on every page.
Yeah. Although I should probably get another copy to, keep clean and have it all nice, look brand new. Because that's what you do when you're a collector.
That's true. Like Tom and Yardy, he's probably got 2 copies.
Who? Never heard of him.
Somebody from another Beatles podcast, there are others, but, if you want to listen to them, listen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kid. My good friend Tom Hunyadi. Yeah, go listen to Two Legs.
Yes. And then come back and listen to Fans on the Run and hear how it's done.
Yeah. We'll be waiting.
Yeah. What would you say is your favourite Beatles album?
Well, it's a bit of a running joke on the show that I say to guests, remember, when you're answering this question, there's a correct answer. And whenever they don't give the correct answer, I get quite upset. And in my opinion, the correct answer is Revolver. It's not even debatable, in my opinion. Like, no one can convince me that the best Beatles album isn't Revolver.
Yeah.
It's not Rubber Soul. It's not the White Album. God knows it's not Sgt. Pepper.
No, but they're all albums that I like. But I would, thinking about it, I would probably say Revolver as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's the perfect midway point.
It is.
It's the transition from the early Beatles, but then you hear, rumblings within of what's to come with Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour.
That's true. Yeah, it's the perfect. It is the perfect transition album between those eras.
And their songwriting is arguably at their most solid because they're still writing with each other. George is on his A game, and this is really where the Beatles started experimenting beautifully in the studio. They had done some stuff, that everyone else does, like the double tracking, and then they started doing like the very speed, like George Martin playing the piano slow and then speeding it up.
Yep.
But here's where you get all the backwards guitars and the ADT and the tape loops and all that beautiful stuff.
Yeah. Paul's guitar solo on
On Taxman,
for instance, when he wanted to give it that sort of back reverse sound into on the guitar solo, so he played it, then he listened to it backwards, so that then he could play it the wrong way around and then get it played, then get it reversed, so it's got that sort of the whoosh sort of reverse.
I've always tried to figure out how to play that, but I've never been able to, because he's just going so fast and it sounds so clunky, but I love it.
It's a strange thing, because you would have thought it shows that all of them helped each other with the songs, and they didn't mind doing. So you've got Paul there doing a solo on that, and you would have thought, being a George song, that George would have, it would have been, oh well, George is going to do a solo on his own song, but then Paul does that.
And then on She Said later on the album, George was the one playing the bass.
Yes, yeah, because of the argument in the studio or whatever. Yeah,
the supposed argument that Paul left the studio and then immediately got hit by a car, and then they covered it up.
Right. So they say yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which you heard it here first. It's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there you've got the difference between the two of them on guitar solo, and because Paul is more, he'll just play whatever comes to mind, whereas George with his playing and also with his songwriting is very meticulous.
Yeah. George is very understated.
Yes, absolutely. He always thinks things out. He doesn't just go for it.
That's not a sentence that I think could be used to describe Paul McCartney. No matter how much I love the man, thought out is not a word I would use to describe his output.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would go along with that. So who is your favourite solo Beatle?
Ooh, that's actually a toughie. I usually like to say George. I can tell you who it's not. It's definitely not Ringo.
No.
I like some of John's solo output. I feel like George had the best stuff overall, but McCartney had more. And so you had the chance for more good stuff. So I think it's going to be a tie between Paul and George.
Yeah.
Although best solo album, I will undoubtedly say is All Things Must Pass, even if it is kind of a generic answer. I don't think it can be topped.
No. And of course, as I say to a lot of people, that the sad part of all of this is that we've only got so little from John to be able to pick from.
To think if he had lived another 40 years, what other solo John Lennon albums we might have gotten.
Absolutely. That's true. And how much better how would Milk and Honey have sounded if they'd have actually had time to work on the songs more rather than them being those initial recordings?
Yeah. Imagine if Milk and Honey was finished.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So, are there any standout moments in the shows that you've recorded so far and put out?
Standout moments? Okay. There's been some episodes that... I'll break that up into two categories. It'll be like interviews I've really liked or really been happy to do because of who the person is. And then there are some moments that I think back to a lot that are just really fun. Like there's some guests that I've had, like Wally Podrazik, Mark Lapidus, Ivor Davis, who was, he was on tour with the Beatles, and amongst other things. Like he was in the room when Bobby Kennedy was shot. He was there at the I think it was the Selma protests in '63 or something. It was really cool. And one of the moments I was listening back to the other day of something that I just really enjoy was I was listening to the episode with my friend Sam Wiles.
Yeah.
And it's the closest it's devolved into a shouting match where I'm not going to say the words because I know you have to censor them out, but he starts insulting some of my favorite Beatles songs and some expletives get thrown around freely. And I really like that episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll admit that I like the fact that you are both. I've said this to Sam as well. The fact that because you're both the ages that you are, and I don't mean that in any way, but you come at the subject in a different way because we're sort of seasons. I mean, I've been listening to the Beatles since birth, so that's a long time.
Yeah.
But yourselves, you bring a freshness to the whole subject. Because of that.
Thank you.
That's okay.
I don't think of it any differently, though, because, you grew up with the Beatles, but I also grew up with the Beatles. We just grew up with the Beatles at different points in time.
Yeah, I think it's because I grew up in a period where at some point it's almost a taboo word. I think in the early 80s and the late 70s, especially in England with the music, it was... it was sort of like, you don't mention the Beatles, you have like, because people mistook, for instance, do you know the Clash song London Calling?
Yes.
Yep, where they talk about phony Beatlemania.
Phony Beatlemania has been in the dust.
That's right, and they're on about, and people took that the wrong way and didn't realise that it was about something. It wasn't about Beatles themselves, it was about the whole what came afterwards. These are the next Beatles and these are the next and this, that and the other. And it was sort of saying, look, that music's then. You can still listen to it. This is now. And that's what it was all about. But people sort of took that as, well, the punk thing is you ignore the Beatles because they're back then and this is now, and you shouldn't be even listening to them. And so there was that sort of thing going around back then.
Which is funny when you look back on it, because with some of those groups, you realized how influential. Well, the Beatles have been influential to everyone, but the Beatles had a lot more of an impact on the punk scene than I think some people realize. One of the biggest defenders I've actually heard in some arguments of the Beatles, even though he doesn't like the music very much, is John Lydon, Johnny Rotten, saying like he doesn't like the Beatles, but you are stupid if you say that the Beatles don't matter. And you hear the Beatles' influence on bands like the Jam and some of those other early 80s, late 70s bands.
Well, the Jam, I mean, Start, you wouldn't have Start if you didn't have Taxman.
Exactly. It's the same bass line.
It's the same bass, basically.
Yeah. Oh, man, I love the Jam.
So, what are your favourite albums, then, by the 4 different Beatles?
Is it cliche to say All Things Must Pass is my favorite George album?
No, not at all, no. I think I can understand why.
'Cause I could, pull a traditional me move and go for something like Wonderwall Music. But no, I just like All Things Must Pass the best. For John, probably Mind Games.
I love that album.
It's a great record. Yeah. Paul, I'll go on record. I've said it before. I was even on Two Legs. McCartney too.
Yep. I like that album as well.
I got called a troll a lot in the chat for that because I was talking about how much I liked bogey music.
Yeah. I loved it when I don't know whether I said it to you or to somebody else when I went to see Paul at Birmingham live about 4 or 5 years ago, and he did. Suddenly he started doing Temporary Secretary, and it was amazing when he did that.
I think you might have told me, but same experience here. When those synth notes started, I was just like, oh my God, is he doing this?
Yeah.
He hasn't done Coming Up in like 30, 40 years, but Temporary Secretary is in the set list.
All we need now is for Brian or Rusty to say to him, next gig, can we do bogey music?
That would be awesome.
Dear, yes, it would.
I would pay an immeasurable amount of money to see him do bogey music.
Yep. And I think he's made a mistake by not touching One of These Days.
See, I'm not crazy about that song. It's that was also why I got trashed, because I put that and Waterfalls at the very bottom of my rank.
Now, Waterfalls, I think you would have done better to have changed that up a bit and not necessarily have done it the way that he did. And in some ways, it's a bit of a dragger of a song as well. It sort of goes on in a way, and so it needed a slight tempo change to lift it, and a rearrangement probably with different instruments and make it more of a band thing, or I don't know.
I'm trying to remember if it was the B-side or not. Because I much prefer the B-side of that single, Check My Machine.
Now, I think that Check My Machine and Secret Friend are brilliant. I love those two. Yeah.
Likewise. Like, if those replaced Waterfalls and One of These Days on the record, it would have been quite possibly the most perfect album ever made.
Yeah, in some ways, One of These Days doesn't fit the musical feel of the rest of the album.
No, it could be better off on like London Town or
Yeah.
something.
In fact, it would have probably been a
And
better
I'm saying
song.
that because I don't like London
Okay.
Town.
Okay. At all?
I like a couple
Yeah.
songs. It's not like Back to the Egg where it's like, I think side one's really good and then side two isn't. But, I like Good Night Tonight. I like with Little Luck.
Yeah.
Actually, wait, no, Good Night Tonight's not on
No,
the
it's
record.
not. No. It's another one of those cases where Paul recorded a song but didn't include that song on the album.
Oh. Okay, yeah, then there's not much of London Town I like
In
then.
fact, no. Good
I
Night
was
Tonight was in the sessions for Back to the Egg, wasn't it? So, yeah, that was it.
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
79 single. Now
I posted up my 12-inch last
Egg
night.
on my
I
face.
posted up a picture of my 12-inch
nice.
version of it last night, actually.
Don't say it.
And the B-side as well, I think that's great. Daytime, Nighttime Suffering.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I just realized I didn't give a Ringo pick
Okay.
yet. Good Night Vienna. That's a good record.
It is. And it makes a change from everybody picking the obligatory self-titled Ringo album.
Well, that was intentional.
But I like Buko's of Blues as well.
See, that's... I feel embarrassed because I'm kind of unfamiliar with his solo career for the most part. Not unfamiliar, it's just, I don't listen to his stuff that much. That's the country one.
Yes, it is, yeah, where they wrote songs specifically for him, and basically they recorded it all before he turned up and he put vocals to it.
Yeah.
But does that make him, other than Paul, the only ex-Beatle to have released 2 albums in the same year?
I think that... Well, actually, wait, which year did Paul put 2 albums out? Or what 2 albums were they?
Didn't Red Rose Speedway come out earlier in the year, and then Band on the Run was later that year?
Yes.
Yeah,
you're right.
Wow, I'm getting knowledge out there.
Now, I don't know if Ringo did Sentimental Journey and Boku's of Blues both come out in 70, or did one come out in 71?
They were both in 70.
Then I guess he is.
So Sentimental Journey would have been around, was that March, April?
Oh, actually, technically John did too, I think.
Okay.
Because I think Life with the Lions and Wedding Album both came out in 69. Yeah. But you could also throw in Live Peace in Toronto.
Yeah. Wow. That's 3 albums in a year.
Actually, I'm getting confused. I don't know if it came out in 69 or 70.
That would make 2 albums in 70, wouldn't it, if Live Peace in Toronto came out?
Yeah. Either way, John's at 2. Possibly 3.
George is slacking.
George is slacking. He had that 5-year break where he just, made Shanghai Surprise.
Yes, I wish he'd have released a soundtrack for that. In a way, because number one, I would like a copy of the song. Is it Breath Away from Heaven? Is it? I'd like a copy of the version of that where he's got Lawrence on it. That's on the Shanghai Surprise soundtrack. That isn't available.
You must be crazy. I like the title song. That's about as far into the movie as I can get.
Okay. Yes, I've never seen the film.
A little too much Madonna and Sean Penn.
Yes, at a time when they were not. Well, yes. Dear me. It's a shame because Sean Penn is actually a good actor sometimes, most of the time.
Yeah.
So,
Well, he found El Chapo, I think.
yes. Yeah. And Colours as well with Robert. Ooh, what's his name? Oh, he was in Colours with. I forgot his name now. Robert Duvall, I think. Yep.
Oh,
But I digress. I'm taking us away from there. That's a tangent. So I'll just go back to Wonderwall music, where you just sort of mentioned it in passing. I think it's a good album just to have in the background and just do other, doing other things with that just in the background, just chilling.
that wasn't a dig at
No,
Wonderwall music. I
I
love
love Wonderwall
Wonderwall
music as
music.
well. That's why I've just pointed it out, is because I think it's a good album to just relax to and have in the background.
Oh yeah, some of those tracks are actually really killer.
They are, but it wasn't until Ed pointed it out to me that I didn't know that those songs ended up not actually being in the film.
Uh, the one that I think is the best, and it's only on the remastered deluxe versions, is the Remo 4 in the first place.
Yes, yeah. Another Apple artist, produced by George, was it?
I don't know if they were Apple, but they were like hired as his studio band for that record. But I think I once heard that song on the Beatles channel on Sirius XM, and it just about blew my mind.
Well,
It's like, they're playing this on the radio?
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow. Next thing you know, they'll be playing Revolution 9.
They probably have. I think it was also the same night they played Claw 2, Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft, on the Beatles channel.
Wow. I'm not sure whether I prefer that or the Carpenters version. I like them both.
Claw 2 all the way.
Well,
Canadian.
yes. There you go. They weren't the Beatles. They were another band, by the way.
No. Claw 2's good in their own right.
So when you're getting ready for each show, what research do you do in preparation for the chats with the people that you talk to?
It's funny to say, I actually don't do a whole lot of research. I don't invite a lot of guests that I don't know at least something about. And for the normal questions, or for like normal people and normal questions, there's not much research you can do, because it's like an opinion show, and it's people's own personal stories.
That's true. So when you're doing the show, do you have a set pattern of what you ask, or is it just natural and flowing and you just come up with the questions as you're recording?
I wish I could say it was completely natural and free-formed, or I try and keep it as loose as I can, but I will admit, Your Honor, I do use a set of questions for each episode. Although I kind of tailor that to whichever guest it is. And I add more on top of that. And I try to keep it loose in the way that whatever follow-up question I have usually relates to what the guest last answered.
Okay, so looking at the guest, then you've already explained about why you asked them to come onto the show and the reasons for why you pick them. How do you actually get the guest to take part in the shows?
Well, it's a lot of it is this wonderful thing that we like to call Facebook, because a lot of them are on there. And so I don't even hesitate a lot of the time. I just send them messages like, hey, or, well, I say it now and it sounds unprofessional, but I write up a nice message explaining what the show is, why I think they'd be a great guest, and if they have any questions, please ask me. And 9.5 times out of 10, they say yes right away. I don't know why. Clearly means they haven't heard of my show if they say yes right away.
think there's something really different about this year. I mean, you sort of touched on it in a sense earlier, where I think it's a side thing from the corona that's going on, where people are at home and they're more freely available to do these things. But also, I think over the years, it's been kind of accepted that podcasts are a real serious thing now, as opposed to years ago. A lot of people saw it as a bit of a fad, but now it's become more acceptable. So I think it's easier now for people to say, look, yeah, okay, I'll go on your show and I'll talk with you for a while.
Yeah. And I'm glad of all the times to start a show, I started it when I did, because now, like you said, people are at home and they have more time to do things like this.
That's true. And some people they might like it as well, because you're touching on something that's important to them and that means a lot
Yeah,
as well. Because music is the one thing, in my opinion, that you can fall back on no matter how you're feeling or how you are. It's always there.
exactly. And especially for a lot of these people, the Beatles music is like a central pillar in their lives.
It is. So how do you record the show and then edit the show together?
Okay, so it varies on whatever medium I'm speaking to the guests through. Some of the time I record through Zoom.
Yep.
Some of the time I record through a service called Clean Feed. Usually what I do is I try and get the cleanest audio possible from the guest. Sometimes they record on their end and send it to me. Like it's happened a few times. Like Ron McNeil from the Fab Four, bless his heart, he did that for my episode, or for the interview with me. But with Clean Feed, I'm able to get really clear audio from the other end. And I, bought a decent microphone towards the start of the show. And so I usually just record my audio as clean as I can. And what my editing really is, and is you can tell listening to the show, apart from the occasional name that gets redacted of a certain author who I'm scared of, and occasionally some rambling tangents that could probably get both my guest and I thrown in prison. It's not edited. So all I do is I slap the intro and the outro, put some EQ, maybe like a noise gate and some compressors, but that's it.
Okay.
Like, again, if I may quote the Jam, not verbatim, but like what you hear is what you get.
Yes, that's a good quote. That's good.
Well, I know it's what you see is what you get, but I
I know
altered
it is.
it.
Yeah, but that's all right. Well, that's entertainment.
Yeah, but that's
So let's
something down in the tube station at midnight.
Whoa. Yep, yep, yep. So the show music. How did you get the show music and the introduction? How did that come about?
Well, the introduction, like this is Fans on the Run. That's my good friend Richard. He's broadcast student. He's in radio. He's all over the place. And whenever I need voiceover stuff, I just ask him. And he did it, and I haven't changed it because it's good.
Yes.
And for the music, this may change in the near future. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But right now, it's this. I can't really talk at length about creative process, because it's basically just Lucy in the sky with diamonds with a different coat of paint. But I spent a day multi-tracking that.
So is that you? That's yours then. Like I've done my tune, you've done your music as well. Yeah.
Yeah. The hardest part was recreating the organ sound from Lucy, because it was on a Lowry Heritage organ, which they don't make like a VST of. So I had to make do with some Farfisa plugin and EQ the hell out of it.
Okay. It's not on. It's not on Reason, is it? Don't know. No.
No, well, I don't know if it's on Reason.
I might have to have a look soon and see if I've got it on Reason. I don't know. Um, so, dear. What else was I going to say?
I came up with a guitar part, but I don't know if I'm competent enough of a player because I couldn't play it in one go, so I had to piecemeal it together with. So play like do do do, and then play the next part, and then splice them together.
I think a lot of people do that nowadays in the days of digital recording.
Well,
That's
why
true.
wouldn't you?
If you can cut and paste, then it's a lot better than the old days when you used to have to punch in on tape.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what's really endearing about the Beatles studio work to me, because this stuff was all done with razor blades and tape.
Yes, yeah. I don't miss those days. So I'm intrigued because you mentioned earlier on an artist that I'm also a fan of from when I was younger, Michael Jackson. So, what other music do you like listening to then that's not Beatles related?
Well, that's experienced a bit of a well. I feel like this year has been good for one thing, other than the podcast, is that I'm listening to a lot more music now. Like I've always liked a lot of other bands. The Who has always been a very very close number two in terms of my favorite band. I love mainly groups I've been listening to these days. XTC, The Move. I love the Small
Yes.
Faces, the early '60s to late '60s Rolling
Yeah.
Stones. A lot of really good. They call it freak beat, like obscure British mod psych from the mid to late '60s. I've been listening to a lot of that this
Okay.
year, which as a record collector is a nightmare because all those singles sold like 5 copies and now they're all worth like $5,000. And I'm not ready to pay that much for a 45.
I'm intrigued now. Explain anybody that's freak beat. What sort of songs and artist would be in there?
The closest mainstream parallel that you might have heard of is some of the Small Faces stuff kind of falls under the freak beat
Okay.
umbrella. Same as some of the Move stuff. It's the transition from like the mid '60s R&B mod stuff to when it started getting really kind of heavier and psychedelic.
Okay.
It's like the midpoint between the two. So there's a lot of great bands that were on, especially the Small Faces label, Immediate. Like there's a band called The Fleur de Lis.
Okay.
There was a band called The Factory, The Action, The Attack. God, there are so many
I've heard of a
bands.
couple of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of them. Oh, one of my favorite freak beat groups is a band called Tomorrow.
Oh yes,
Tomorrow is
with
fantastic.
Steve Howe on guitar.
Steve Howe from
Yeah.
Yes, and the drummer Twink.
Yes. Yeah.
He was in the Pretty Things, wasn't he?
Yeah. Was in the Pink Fairies as well.
He was in the Pink Fairies. And I think he was in that one group that like Sid Barrett was in for felt like 5 minutes in the early '70s. Like it was called like Sparks or something.
Yeah. There's a great interview with Twink on Jason Barnard's show, the Strange Brew podcast. If you're interested.
I'll have to go listen to that. 'Cause I could listen to that man talk for
Absolutely.
ages.
Yeah.
Twink is an infinitely fascinating character.
Absolutely. So I'm guessing when you were talking to Kit, then that you was probably 50% talking about the Beatles and 50% talking about Michael Jackson.
It was more maybe 20% Michael Jackson.
Because I know you
Yeah.
both have a similar,
But we
love.
oh we do. you know, Michael, I love his music,
Me too. So do I.
regardless of some of the allegations that have been made, whether or not they're true or not. You can't deny that the man was, gifted, and that he put out some fantastic stuff.
He did, but then there was some stuff that he didn't put out that was also fantastic.
That he did. I really like what I've been finding myself listening to if I'm listening to Michael Jackson. A lot of the early to mid 90s stuff, like on the Dangerous album, History.
Yeah, History is a really good one. I mean, I like Blood on the Dance Floor as well. I think that's a good album, and that's so underrated.
Well, isn't it mostly remixes though? There's a couple of new songs, but it's mostly remixes.
I mixed it up for that other album you brought out. That was, what was that album called?
Dangerous.
I know about Dangerous. I'm thinking the one. Is it like came out in all different colour, depending on which?
Invincible.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, because you got You Rocked My World on there, and
I'm not super crazy about Invincible, but
I think there's some really good stuff on there mixed in.
There is.
But you've got a problem in a way there where you have it with a lot of groups now where you can have an album where there's almost too much going on an album because you've got all that amount of space on a CD. It's almost like the compactness of the old days with a vinyl album where you only had 30 minutes or so to be able to fit onto both sides. It's almost like that was a nice compact size. And
you were limited to, in Britain, like 14 tracks per side. Oh no, 14 tracks on an album total.
And those songs are always like a maximum of 3 minutes as well, which is crazy.
Exactly.
Thinking that you get all that in a period of 3 minutes.
And then when you think of all the good singles from the period, barely half of them were even over 2 minutes.
True. Yeah.
It's even like unheard of to hear a single that was like over 3 minutes.
Definitely. Yep, that's true. So coming back to the Beatles in a way with that, that's something that's interesting as well, because you've got in the period of 4 or 5 years, 5 years or so, you get from the quick 2-minute single to Hey Jude, which is just crazy.
It is crazy, especially when you look at earlier that year, the single like Lady Madonna was still like 2.5 minutes or so.
Absolutely. The how quickly they transitioned from one to another to another to another, and they grew, is ridiculous, because the amount that they were putting out constantly as well.
Well, this kind of shows you how esoteric my brain works. And the first thing that came up when I was thinking about how long Hey Jude was a lyric from, get this, a Baron Knight song.
Okay.
It was this one about the Olympics, and it's like, the marathon was long, or the marathon was as long as the Beatles' latest song. I don't know why that was the first thing I thought of.
That might be what they were thinking of, I think.
Yeah. I'm probably the only 18-year-old Canadian making Baron Knights references.
I know. I never expected that at all. There you go. No,
you learn something new every day.
It's like the Monty Pythons with the Spanish Inquisition. You should never expect it.
Don't even get me started on Monty Python.
I knew I should get that one out.
Yeah. Stop that. It's silly.
Yes, it is. So, could you name one song that you think is overlooked by each one of the 4 separate Beatles, and possibly an overlooked Beatles song?
Overlooked John Lennon's song "Meat City."
Yep, great.
That's a great track.
Yeah.
McCartney, I'm gonna say bogey music.
Okay. Yep.
It's to be expected. Underlooked George song. God, I can't think of one. I actually don't know.
Yeah.
Underlooked Ringo. I mean, it's popular, but it's still underlooked. Weight of the World.
Yes. Yep. Yep. But I
Because
think that
it's late period Ringo.
I think that whole album is overlooked.
Time Takes Time.
Time Takes Time. Lovely, great album.
And underlooked Beatles song, It's All Too Much.
Oh,
Although it's hard to say there's an underlooked Beatles song, considering there's about 586 podcasts about the Beatles.
yeah, just a few. So, other than your work on your own show, you also provide artwork for others as well, like Two Legs. So, how did all that come about, and what do you use to create that artwork?
Well, it started off with, Andy Nichols reached out to me, good friend Andy. He was asking me about the software I use, which is, nothing fancy. It's just Photoshop.
Okay.
And he was asking me, like, how do I, do this? And I just offered, I'll just do the thumbnails. It's no skin off my back.
Okay.
And, I did. I did them. Still doing them.
Cool. Anyway, other than your own show, you are also now a co-host on the show When They Was Fab, and I've had Ed Chen as a previous guest already about that. So how did that come about?
It came about kind of long story short. I had appeared on When They Was Fab twice, talking about the anthologies or the TV broadcasts, and Lonnie was gone for a period of time with the show, and Ed was looking for a temporary fill-in, temporary secretary, if you will. And I was one of the people he asked, and so I was free. Yeah, and I just did it, and then Lonnie came back, and like one big happy family, I didn't leave. Squatters' rights.
Yep, I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. Nope, I've already settled in, made myself comfortable.
That's it. You've put the cushion on the chair, and you're stuck there now.
Exactly.
It's got your name. It's got your name written on the back.
I've nailed the chair to the floor.
Yes. So.
And I've nailed the cushion to the chair.
That's good to know. That is good to know. So, do you think things have changed slightly with When They Was Fab since you've joined?
I don't really know. I think I'm speaking as someone who is on episodes. All I know is I just have fun doing them.
Okay. I just mean, do you think it changes the dynamic where now that you've got three people in there? You think it makes it more of an interesting and I don't really know how to explain it.
No, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
I think so. I don't know if it's better, but it's a different dynamic with the three of us. And then there's still episodes where it's just Ed and Lonnie, and then there's episodes where it's Ed and I. Ed is the only constant. Ed will be here long after both of us are gone.
Like Paul McCartney was Beatle Ed. Ed Chen is When They Was Fab Ed.
Exactly.
Yes. So, what other podcasts do you listen to, Ethan?
I listen to all my friends' podcasts. But yeah, in terms of Beatles ones, Well, you see, it's hard because I have such a short attention span. So I try and listen to as many podcasts as I can, but there's only a to really consistently. I'll name a number of them, and those out there who know which ones I listen to them will know. But
Okay.
Talk More Talk, Two Legs, When There Was Fab, Things We Said Today, Paul or Nothing, Something About the Beatles Naked, and I'm sure I'm leaving out Glass Onion. I'm probably leaving out some really important ones that I really like listening to a lot.
What do you listen to any that aren't Beatles related?
Yes. Although it's one with it's a kind of a rude title. Can I say it?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, it is called keep in mind it's still one of the most like successful podcasts like financial wise. It's called Come Town.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of political, kind of not. It's very, very rude, and my friends and I all love it, and we just send each other clips of the show all the time.
Okay, that's
Interesting title.
it is an interesting title.
Yeah. There's a similar one with it's a nicer title called Chapo Trap House.
Yes, I know where they're going with that one.
Yeah.
So even though you're a new podcast sort of yourself, although saying that you've done a lot of episodes being a new podcaster,
that I have.
What advice would you give to other podcasters starting up for the first time?
Don't overthink it. I feel like that was my biggest worry. It's because I'm anyone who knows me knows I'm ridiculously self-conscious. I put on this facade when I'm doing the show of someone who's confident, someone who, jokingly doesn't know what they're doing but does and is sure of themselves. That is not true. I'm quite insecure, but my advice would be to anyone out there doing it, just go for it.
Yeah.
That's the best advice I can give. Just go for it.
That is great.
Don't think twice.
That's yep. Just go for it.
You won't know if it'll work until you do it.
And when you've got the money, get some better equipment, a better microphone, and whatever. Just use what you've got at the moment, and then
And try and another piece of advice I give to people is, look into software like Zencaster, or I use CleanFeed because it's free, but to try and improve the audio quality all around.
Okay. What software, by the way, do you actually use when you're editing the show together?
This is embarrassing because I have a lot of really good software at my disposal. Like I have Adobe Audition. I have, even though Ableton's not really meant for editing, I have that. But I use a software for the most part because it's easy, called Mixcraft.
Okay. So what is Mixcraft then, and how does it work?
It's, if you've ever used GarageBand, it's pretty much that. It's a really kind of simple DAW.
Yep.
Or DAW.
A bit like Audacity and things like that.
Well, it's different than Audacity because there's MIDI stuff in here. So you can use VSTs and plugins and all that stuff. That's where I did the theme.
Right.
It's really easy for me to just play with myself. Actually, no, that came out much worse than I thought it would.
Okay, and that might be a subject that we're mentioning in a future episode with the people from Bad Council.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for the chat show version of, or for the advice show version of Pods Like Us coming to you very soon. that will have a parental advisory attached to it, shall we say?
I mean, I think I've got my bases covered because all the Fans on the Run episodes, even if I don't even swear, I think I just make them all show up as explicit just to be on the safe side.
In some ways, it would have been easier to have done that from the off, because then I wouldn't have to do quite so much editing and trying to see if I can get S words or F words that are really close to other words out. Or
because I think anyone listening who's familiar with my show knows that I'm kind of fond of the F word.
So what have you got coming up then, Ethan, for anybody who's interested?
Well, actually, there's if this is going out on Monday, then this coming Friday, I want to get the date right, the 26th, I'm appearing on another pod, Blotto Beatles. They're doing a charity event for ALS1, which is a trivia contest, and I'm one of the people asking questions, along with the aforementioned Sam Wiles, Ken Womack's going to be there, and BC the Beatles, Allison and Erica.
So where can people find the podcast, and how can people get in touch with you?
Well, you can listen to the show just about everywhere podcasts can be heard. I'm not even going to attempt to list all of them because I have no idea where they can be found. Because Podbean has probably signed me up for 1 billion services that I don't even know about. But you can find me on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts. I mean, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio.com, Podbean, Podbay, Stitcher, the usual suspects. And you can also find them on YouTube, where I post them there. And I also, you can find me on Facebook, the Fans on the Run podcast, Twitter, Instagram. I really like, because I'm able to post all the artwork I do for the shows, all the because I love doing that for each episode, doing a custom cover of whoever it is inserted into a Beatles album or single sleeve or solo album or single sleeve, whatever it is. And so I post all the artwork there on Instagram.
I think it's fun when you do that, actually.
Oh, I love doing it.
It's much like I like the pun that you've got with the title of the show as well.
Well, I didn't come up with the title, so I have to admit that.
Go on then, who came up with the title?
Well, I had him on the show. There's a collective of fans called the Fans on the Run. They go around from like Paul McCartney concerts. They follow him around on tour, and they're a bunch of wonderful people. And kind of the main guy involved is a guy named Ricky Glover, and Ricky is a very sweet man. And I had him on Fans on the Run, and we kind of cleared the air in a sense. And I said, sorry for stealing the name. And he said, after, we're all just fans on the run after all, which is true.
That's obviously not one of the 12 episodes I've listened to so far.
Okay.
I need to, as with most of these shows, I need to listen to all of the shows and catch up.
Well, I mean, I have put out a lot of episodes, so I can't blame you. No. I wouldn't listen to all of them. This is probably the worst thing a guy with a podcast could say. It's like, I don't blame you for not listening to them all.
I will end up listening to them all.
Yeah.
At some point.
At some point.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. Thank you once again, Ethan, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And I hope you will return for another episode of Pods Like Us. No, I won't put that in the show then, shall I?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What's your favorite Rush album?
My favorite Rush album is probably Moving Pictures.
That's a solid
Yeah,
choice. I love Moving Pictures, but I also like uh, I really like the follow up
Signals.
Signals,
Yes. Yeah.
and one of my favorite Rush albums is actually a couple from the early '90s, Roll the
Yeah.
Bones, and the one after that, Counterparts.
Yes, I love both of those albums. And Counterparts was interesting. I mean, you wouldn't know, but when that came out, it was a surprise to people as well because you'd had the Roll the Bones, and before that you'd had Presto, and then suddenly Counterparts. You've got that searing. It's just
Oh yeah,
all out
borderline
borderline
grunge.
grunge. Just starts the album fabulously, and it just flows beautifully from one song to the next, and it's a perfect album.
I can't remember what the first song on the album is. Is it Stick It Out?
Yeah, I think it might be.
That's the song from the album that always sticks out to me. No pun intended. Yes, pun intended. I actually really like some of Rush's really cheesy mid '80s stuff too.
I like the mid 80s, but then again, I think my first album I bought by them was Grace Under Pressure, I think.
Okay,
Although it might have been Hold Your Fire.
what's the one? Power Windows. That's the one I'm thinking of with like the big money,
Yes. Yeah.
which is somehow the most '80s thing I've ever heard,
Yeah. And
even though it's Rush.
the most 80s video they've done as well.
No, the most '80s video is the one for Time Stand Still.
Oh, yes, with that beauty. Yeah, but it's got. Oh, but saying that, you've
Yeah,
got
but
you've got that.
they're in front of the
Yeah.
green screen and the
And
camera's
you
moving
can tell
around.
it's terrible effect on there. But you've got behind all that though, you've got that beautiful vocal from Amy Mann on there.
Yeah. Plus, it's a solid
Oh,
song.
absolutely, yeah, and
It's typical mid '80s Rush.
it is. But the amount of different bits that they get into that song is incredible. You know, all the different changes and everything in there.
Rush is like one of those like I'll say like prog rock bands that you either love or you hate.
Yes,
Like some people, either love or hate. Yes. King Crimson. I love King Crimson.
me too. I'm not one of those that would pick an era for King Crimson and say that's it either. I'm an all through. I can see a through line from the beginning to where they are now.
Well, I wish I could say that. I'm more so a fan of the like early King Crimson stuff, like the first 2 or 3 albums.
Okay.
Mainly like the Greg Lake stuff.
Yeah.
Because they put out the Procol Harum albums, the Move albums. I think like some of the early Joe Cocker stuff.
Yeah. But you've got acts like that where Chris Blackwell, I think in a way, I think for people listening, Chris Blackwell was the man behind Island Records. So I think with him, I think he was really clever in that he picked artists where he knew he'd got artists like, with Traffic, you've got Steve Winwood, so you're going to have the odd hit single with them anyway.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he had a perfect 50-50 where he'd say, right, we've got the experimental this side, but we can keep going with that because we're getting the money from, we've made a fortune with Paper Sun or whatever.
Well, same thing with Immediate Records. They were able to put out a lot of bands that wouldn't have been on labels otherwise. But Andrew Lou Goldham was raking in the money from the Small Faces stuff, and like Chris Farlow and P.P. Arnold, and like Amen Corner.
Yeah. Well, that's a good that's good what you've just said, really, because with the Small Faces, you've got another band there where they write the hits, but they also aren't afraid to to do the experimentation. I mean, Ogden's is an
Ogden's. Oh my God.
absolute incredible piece of work.
Well, you have the whole side B being, you know, they call it like a fairy story narrated by Stanley Unwin.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you sitting comfy ball 2 square on your body? Then I'll begin.
Stanley Unwin. I remember Stanley Unwin from a Jerry Anderson series called The Secret Service.
Yeah. Wasn't he in a lot of the Goon stuff too?
He might have been. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not super familiar with the Goons, but I think I remember hearing that.
He might have been. I mean, it would have fitted in well there with Spike and and Harry and Peter Sellers and Michael Benty. He'd have fitted in there perfectly.
Oh yeah. You know what we could do? I occasionally do this thing on my channel where I bring someone on and we talk about an album track by track. And I've wanted to do the Moves' first album for a while, but I haven't found a willing subject.
I'm going to have to listen to that again. I've not heard their first album for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, I think I told you I picked up a deluxe CD copy the other day. I don't even buy CDs anymore, but I picked it up because it's just fantastic. But imagine starting off an album with like Yellow Rainbow and then going into Kilroy Was Here and then all those fantastic tracks like Walk Along the Water, Useless Information. Then the hits like Fire Brigade and Flowers in the Rain. I'm just rambling.
No, you're not rambling at all. They're brilliant.
Yeah.
Dear me. Overlooked genius, Roy Wood.
Overlooked indeed.
Yep, absolutely. Brilliant. Anyway, thank you very much, Ethan. I'll catch up with you soon.
Okay. Thank you. I'll send you the audio probably via like a Google Drive.
Okay, that's fine. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ethan. Right. You take care.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. I'm trying to venture more into the prog rock world because I like my King Crimson. I like some of the Yes I Know, and so I'm like, I knew my dad, my late dad, liked Genesis a lot. So it's like, oh, I should probably give this stuff a whirl, and I really like it.
So what era of Genesis was your dad an everything Genesis, or was he specific era Genesis?
Peter Gabriel Genesis.
Yes, up till 74. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 74. Is it 70? 74. Yeah, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, 74. Yeah. So
yeah.
Dear me. Yeah, that's another.
Of course, my favorite Genesis album is the first one.
Genesis to Revelation. Wow. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. I like that album. I think it's overlooked. I like it. It's like the transition from psychedelic to prog.
Exactly.
Because you've got the orchestration from the psychedelic, and then it leads into the prog with the use of the with the everything else. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's like a cross between Days of Future Past, SF Sorrow, and then What's to Come.
That's true. Oh, you've got music on your end now.
I've got music on my end.
I heard something on your end like a boom.
Oh, I may have bumped my mic stand. Was this it?
Yes, yeah, but a little bit deeper.
Yep, that was my mic.
But yes,
that was my mic arm.
That's all right. I might sample. I'm grabbing little sound bites now from different things, so I've got some people saying certain things and So I've got from an episode, I've got Dave Belknap doing his James Brown impression, because he
Oh.
did, because we were talking in the chat about James Brown had this. He had somebody who worked for him, who sat at the side of the stage, and they had a ledger, a notebook, but like a ledger, and any time that a musician was slightly wrong, it'd point at the musician, and then that chap would have to write on the ledger that person's name, and they'd dock them money from their pay for making mistakes.
Oh, I've heard about that.
So Dave did this hilarious one where he goes $2, huh. Except he did a better version than me.
Yours is better than anything I could do. My voice is a little hoarse.
I've been trying to practice.
Really?
So we ended up with about 2.5 hours of footage that I've got to trawl through to make an episode out of now. That's yeah.
Oh,
I
damn.
know. So wow. I don't want another one of those for a while. My new design, that somebody's done that for me for free.
I like that, the peas in a pod.
Absolutely, yeah. I thought they did well with Louise's initial idea. With that picture that she did, they basically took the picture that I put up of Louise's, which was a bit, she wasn't that happy with it. She thought she was a bit embarrassed. But I think they've done a brilliant job with that.
I like it.
Oh, I know a recent find that I think's brilliant is that Winter of Discontent. Have you heard that yet?
I've heard of it.
Okay.
It's the one that goes through the Niagara reels of the Get Back sessions, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Oh.
He's on episode 4, and he's still on day 1. Because I put something up about it, and he said, "Oh, trust me," he says, "you're still on day 1 for episode 8."
Oh, wow.
It's like, wow, he's that's going to be a long running series.
Oh, he's giving himself room.
Crikey. Did you see that I put up the other day on my Instagram where I was being told that I was listening to too many podcasts, basically?
By who?
By my iPhone.
Oh.
It was saying to me, "You spent too long, it's damaging your ears, you need to cut down." And I'm like, pardon?
Tell your phone to quit being a narc.
Oh no, it's that new iOS.
Simple pleasures.
So, where were we going then?
If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Would you put electronic sound at number 1?
I have never heard electronic sounds. I haven't actually got that.
You should. It's a trip.
Right.
Now, by saying that, I didn't exactly say it was a good record, but it's a trip.
No, that's good. I'm irritated that I didn't get the Apple Years box set when it came out, and now it's far too expensive for me to be able to afford.
Is it one of those frustrating ones that it's now out of print and is stupidly expensive?
Yes, yep. You can't get it officially now because it's out of print, so you have to go and buy it from eBay, where I think it's about £600 or
Jesus
something on eBay.
Christ! What?
So, what makes it more irritating is I've got the Dark Horse box set, but I've not got that set.
See, the same thing happened with the Beatles mono vinyl reissues. I put off buying any Beatles reissues because it's just like, I'd rather buy the other ones. And then by the time I wanted to start buying the mono ones, they were out of print. And so Sgt. Pepper and Help are now like $200.
Wow.
And luckily I was able to get the stereo box, which, was very common. And even that I think is now out of print. But I was able to snag it for, I think, maybe $300, $350.
We're going off on tangents here, aren't we?
Tends to happen with me.
It does. With me as well. That's why I do an hour and a half recordings, and sometimes they come out as 45-minute episodes.
See, I don't edit out the tangents.
Yes. Yeah. I'm wondering whether or not to broach the subject of the move and Beatles, and I mean the Birmingham scene of the 60s.
The Brumbeat.
Yes. I'm of the opinion that in some ways that the Brummie scene was more varied than the Liverpool scene.
I'd say so. Birmingham produced, I'd say, like Liverpool had the Beatles, and they also had Jerry, R.I.P. They had Billy J. Kramer, Scylla, but Birmingham had the Move, they had the Moody Blues, they had the Idle Race, and then they had Black Sabbath.
That's where I'm going, yeah. And Led Zeppelin.
Really?
Well, you've got Robert Plant and John Bonham. They're both Birmingham lads.
Ah.
So you've got the half of Led Zeppelin, shall we say? I suppose. Yeah. I sometimes wonder, actually, even now, I wonder if Denny Lane wasn't particularly given as much in the early days of Wings as he could have been. I don't know.
I guess that's just a what if.
Yeah, because I seem to think that I Would Only Smile was a good song.
Well, could you imagine what Wings could have been like if they weren't just the Paul McCartney band?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if like Jimmy McCulloch had more songs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I've always wondered what would have happened if Hugh McCracken had have said yes to joining Wings.
That would have been interesting.
We need Paul to come on and do these shows so that he can answer all these questions.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like he was getting close last year with all the promotion for McCartney 3. It's like he's doing anything.
Yeah, I think he should go on, when they was fab, and then he could go on Fans on the Run, and that'd be a bit meta, that, wouldn't it, really?
Although it'd be weird, hey Paul, how did you first discover the Beatles?
Yeah. I think the problem sometimes with things like that is that sometimes I think the people interviewing him are a bit lazy with the questions, and I think they need to do their own work a bit and think, I wonder what question I could ask that he's not been asked or that he doesn't get asked very often.
Yeah.
Just to almost like catch him out and get something different from him.
You occasionally see it happen. Like the interview with Chris Rock, I feel, was pretty refreshing.
Yeah. I haven't seen that yet, so
it's good.
Favorite solo.
The beauty of editing.
But yes, my editing. Yeah. Which is funny because I'm looking at doing this one before all the other episodes that I've got recorded. I'm looking at bringing this one out on Monday.
Oh.
Quick turnaround. Because the rest of what we recorded in November That's already in shape, isn't it? If you see what I mean.
Yeah. Oh shit, that was November, wasn't
It was
it?
the end of November. Yes.
That was like 3 or 4 months ago.
I know. I
Wow.
know. Dear me, it's taking a while to
Luckily,
get
most
these.
of my answers are still the same.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yep. So we've already got, because we asked back then about your details, where to find you, blah 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 blah. Of course, because it's
Conestoga.
Blotto Beatles, where that it does exactly what it says on the tin. Like Fans on the Run does exactly what that says on the tin.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, my parents like the Beatles. Um, they aren't as crazy as I am, but my mom actually went to a Paul McCartney concert with my dad while she was pregnant with me.
Okay.
And apparently the first time I kicked was during Live and Let Die.
I'm not surprised with all those fireworks going off.
Exactly. Especially, I think it was Madison Square Garden, so, all the fireworks going off indoors.
Yes, I had the same thing in Birmingham. That was an indoor venue, and but when he did Live and Let Die, I thought, blimey, I've never seen fireworks indoors.
Yeah.
It was quite something.
It was quite something. That something might be a fire
I
hazard.
know. And then 3 years later, I went to see Iron Maiden at an indoor arena, and they did fireworks in their performance as well, indoors.
I mean, since you're in Birmingham, might have had to call the fire brigade. See the building start to really burn. Ooh.
Ooh, I wonder if that ended up in the diary of Horace Wimp as an entry.
Just a load of useless information.
Absolutely. I'm glad it's not Christmas every day.
Something, something, see my baby jive.
That is a really good song. That is really,
That is.
yeah.
I've also been listening to Rock and Roll Winter quite a bit.
Yes.
Lately.
Yeah, I've got that on. I have that on my Christmas playlist every year.
Well,
that song.
That's a good one.
It's,
Also, Birmingham bands. I forgot Slade.
yes,
They're also
Slade. Yeah, In Flames. Yeah.
Well, I've been trying to find that movie, but it's I can't seem to find it.
You're going to make me look now, aren't you? Wonder if I can find it somewhere. Oh, you've got me looking there. If this goes in the eventual show, this is going to be really fascinating.
Yeah, I would have thought. I checked the other day because I don't even buy that many like DVDs anymore. Like, if I can buy the Blu-ray, I will.
No, I know what you mean. I'm the same. What's this one like? I found it in the States for you.
Oh,
What?
Slade in Flame.
Slade in Flame DVD. It's a double set with a CD with it.
Oh, where is it?
Let's have a look. Where does it say?
Like, what is it? eBay?
Mind you, that's $40.85.
Okay, that's a little steep for a CD DVD, but it's better than £70.
That's from Florida.
Okay, I've heard of Florida.
So have I. Let's have a look. Or Flo Rider, as he likes to call himself.
That he does. Just like how that William fella likes to call himself Will I Am.
So how can I share that?
Pick a lane, buddy.
Yes. Yep. Copy. Have you got the chat open in Zoom?
I can have the chat open. Yeah, I have it open now.
Here we go. There we are. That's a link to that. Mind you, that's the UK version of eBay, that site that I've sent you.
Oh, don't worry. I'm quite familiar with eBay.co.uk. You guys have British records for sale a lot cheaper than North American sellers. That's how I got the "I Can Hear the Grass Grow" single for like $8.
I got the deluxe edition of the archive reissue for Ram, cheaper getting it from the American Amazon site than the British one.
Seriously?
Seriously. So I ordered it there, and I think I saved about £25, which is quite significant.
Huh.
So I ordered it from America and got it shipped over to here, which still cost me less money than buying it using the Amazon Prime from England. Terrible. Dear me. So is that link okay for the Slade? That's
Yeah.
That's the cheapest I've found it for you.
I mean, I could probably pirate it somewhere.
Maybe.
And get it for like $0.
I couldn't believe it. I think, was it about 6 years ago? I was watching BBC or something, and then I looked in the television guide, and they actually had In Flame the film on television that night. So I actually watched it on television, and I thought, wow, you never see that.
Actually, wait. Does it ship to Canada?
From the US? That's a good point. Well, if they ship it to the UK...
It says postage to United States, Europe. Does it exclude Canada? It doesn't. It doesn't explicitly exclude Canada, so I might be able to.
Well, if not, you could always get it shipped to Ed or Lonnie.
That is true.
And then get them to send it to you.
Yeah.
After Lonnie's watched it.
I'm not sure what Lonnie would think of, or what Lonnie thinks of Slade. Well, I'm going to have to bring that up in the next episode.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Hey, Lonnie, have you ever seen the 1975 film Slade in Flame?
Yep.
No, Ethan, I don't think I have.
It fits well in a show all about the Beatles.
Yeah. I once did a kind of Texan accent at the end of an episode, but I stopped doing it because I'm not sure if it came off like I was making fun of them. Y'all come back now, you hear?
Oh, yes. That's good. I thought that was good. Well done.
Well, yeah, those boys are from Houston.
They are.
Yeah, I'm from Canada.
You come back now, y'all.
Yeah, come back now, you hear?
Oh, dear. I told you I'm bad at accents.
Yeah, oh, don't worry. I'm only good at like other accents just because I watch a lot of Monty Python. And I'm able to parrot, pun intended, those sketches.
Hopefully Zoom will come through and not do what it did with the previous one that I've got to re-record all my dialogue for because it speeded me up.
Luckily, I've never had to do that.
When it's done the conversion, I'm speaking like somebody that's from New York or something, where they talk really quickly. It's like I'm on speed or something. Anyway, Ethan, thank you very much for that, mate, and I'll catch you soon. If you need me for anything, just call on me and we'll sort something out if ever.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I enjoyed chatting with you again.
You too. It's great chatting with you. You take care, Ethan. Thanks for this.
You too, Marv.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.
So, I hear that congratulations are in order because you're now
For
a
who?
member of the
What's
team
going on?
when there was. Sorry. I'm trying to go from one question to another.
Oh no, I know. I'm doing my alarmed bit.
Excuse me. What?
What? Congratulations for who?
Congratulations!
Why?
You've won an award. Way!
I win the award for most depressed teenager in my room.
You win the award for most pictures going online that you've done on everybody else's Instagram pages.
That's true. Hi, Tom and Andy.
Yes, and yep. So what? Do you know what? We might as well go to that then.